Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little black subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that black subscribe button. Really does help our audience grow, really does help our channel grow, really does help and mean more than you could possibly know. So go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet 50 on any game, get $250 in free bets. Thank you again to Betfred. Thank you again to you. Now, here is the video that you came here for. All right, one last basketball topic before we do get out of here. And it's a doozy, I'll tell you that much. But obviously, look, we led the segment talking a little bit about that Bama-Kentucky game. And we largely talked about it from the Bama perspective, I think for two kind of completely different reasons. One, Bama's really, really, really good. I want to give them their credit. I want to throw rose petals at their feet because I think they're a really good basketball team this year. And I think they're a team that's good enough to be playing in Houston to compete for a national championship on the final week of the season. At the same time, the other reason we really didn't talk all that much about the Kentucky element of things is because, let's be honest, there is nothing new to talk about with Kentucky. The offense isn't very good. They struggle away from Rupp Arena. There's just not that much new or exciting to discuss when it comes with this team. But as kind of Saturday wore on, and as just the whole day unfolded post Kentucky, Alabama, there was one angle on Kentucky basketball that I do think is worth discussing. And it's something that I actually largely probably should have brought up on Friday's show, but I mostly glossed over. So let's get into it. That topic, well, it's a Kentucky topic, but it's also a Texas topic, a topic that starts in Austin, Texas, because on Friday's show, we obviously talked about the firing of Chris Beard by the University of Texas. We don't need to go through, again, all of the elements there. You can go back and listen to that show if you missed it on Friday. At the same time, though, on Friday's show, I did a big segment on candidates and who I thought was realistic for that job. And I threw out a bunch of names. I threw out Scott Drew, Brad Underwood, maybe Nate Oates if you're willing to pay that buyout, Eric Musselman if Hunter Yurchek doesn't smartly get him a contract extension on the table, on the desk right now. So I kind of listed a bunch of candidates. But the one guy that I really kind of just glossed over was John Calipari. I mean, yes, I had kind of sort of heard, should he be a candidate? I told you my buddy Nick Coffey, who hosts radio in Louisville, kind of asked me on his show in passing, hey, you think Cal would actually listen to Texas based on what's going on with Kentucky? And as I said, I kind of dismissed not only Nick, but I kind of dismissed it on Friday's show. Well, a couple things have happened since then that I think is probably worth revisiting this Calipari to Texas. Is there anything to these rumors, this story? One, after I finished doing the show on Friday, I kind of just searched, other names. Did I miss anybody in this conversation? And I will say multiple lists did include John Calipari. Now, I don't agree with some of the people that put him on this list, but his name is at least being floated out there. I would add on top of that, that after the Alabama game, I saw a lot of Kentucky fans tweeting, at the University of Texas, at the Texas AD, hey, take John Calipari off our hands. So what I did on Saturday afternoon into Sunday, I got on the phone with a couple people who I know are very close to John Calipari. I talked to two people that are close to Coach Cal to kind of gauge, like, do you think this is something that needs to be kind of looked into a little bit more? And what I would say is I think it's absolutely worthy of a topic of conversation here. And what I would absolutely say is there's definitely more legs to it, probably than I gave it credit for on Friday. And so let's get into it. Let's break it down. Because as I said, I talked to a couple people that kind of know Coach Cal. And what I would say after speaking to them, a couple things stand out. One, I absolutely think if Chris Del Conte, the Texas AD, calls John Calipari, I absolutely think he's picking up, zero doubt about it, and he's listening to what Chris Del Conte has to say. On top of that, I think if Chris Del Conte says the right things, I think if Chris Del Conte offers the job, I think if the money is right and the facilities and resources and the vision is aligned with something that John Calipari is interested in, I don't think it's crazy that if Texas offered John Calipari the job, that he would accept it. And so a lot of people are probably sitting there saying, maybe you're not a Kentucky fan. Why would Coach Cal leave Kentucky? Which you can like Kentucky, you can hate Kentucky, you can this, you can that. Why would he leave for Texas? Texas is in a better job than Kentucky. But what Texas does have is what we talked about on Friday's show. They have literally the facility, the financial resources to compete with anybody in college basketball. It doesn't mean that they'll have the history of Kentucky or the legacy of North Carolina or the championships of Kansas. But it's ironic. I remember talking about this when Chris Beard took the Texas job. People said, why would you leave Texas Tech for Texas, even if it's your alma mater? And I said, I think it's because Chris Beard believes that he can turn Texas into the next Kentucky, into the next North Carolina, where 50 years from now, we're maybe talking about Texas in the same way that we talk about Carolina, Kansas, Kentucky, UCLA, whatever. Obviously, we will never see if that vision takes place, but the bottom line remains everything that you need to win at the highest level is available at Texas. Keep in mind, from a facilities perspective, what was the big dust up in the summertime? What was the big complaint from John Calipari? Oh, we need a new basketball facility. We're a basketball school, not a football school. Remember, that started a whole firestorm and a week's worth of headlines. We're a basketball school, not a football school. Well, guess who's currently building a brand new state-of-the-art basketball facility right on campus? The University of Texas is. No frills. I know that the Kentucky Wildcat Lodge is fantastic, so I'm not saying that Kentucky's facilities are in the Stone Age. But you talk about new, you talk about investment, you talk about the things that John Calipari wants from Kentucky. Texas is currently doing that. Oh, by the way, they just opened the brand new Moody Center, their on-campus basketball arena. On top of all that, it's what we discussed on Friday's show. The finances, the money, the resources, everything that you need to compete at the highest level. Oh, by the way, where's John Calipari's main recruiting ground been over the last decade? I would argue it's been a little bit in New York, New Jersey with guys like Karl Anthony Towns, Isaiah Briscoe, whoever. But it's been mostly Texas. Think about Texas. Cason Wallace on this year's team, Tyrese Maxey in the NBA, Julius Randle in the NBA, Aaron Harrison, Andrew Harrison in the NBA. Went after Cade Cunningham, went after RJ Hampton. All those players are in Texas. You're at the state school, the University of Texas. You got a good chance to land them. So it would take the right offer, but again, everything is needed at Texas to win, and that's why I think John Calipari would listen. And then, oh, by the way, the other reason I think he would listen, and this is important, Kentucky fans, and I love you. You guys have been great to me, just like you've been great to Coach Cal for most of his tenure. You're still pretty much good to me, not so much to Coach Cal, and I don't blame you. But the other reason I think Coach Cal would consider it is probably the reason that you know what I'm getting to. He knows what everybody's saying about him. And the one thing you can say about Coach Cal, the one thing you cannot deny, this is a man. He is a man that is not afraid to hold a grudge, right? He is a man that is not afraid to say exactly what's on his mind at any given moment. But he's also a guy that keeps tabs and keeps a list in his head of what has been said about him. And so he's very aware of what Kentucky fans have said about him. Now, I don't want to kind of alter the conversation because I think like any marriage, there's been some ups and some downs, and there's been a lot of good between both sides, the Kentucky fan base and Calipari. Even dating back to the summer, you think about the flood relief, the Gonzaga announcement. There's been a lot of positivity, but obviously during the season, coming off last year in the first round NCAA tournament exit to St. Peter's, there has been a ton of negativity. And again, fans, I don't blame you. You're holding your program to an insanely high standard. I don't blame you one bit. But John Calipari knows it, and that's part of the reason why he would leave. I also think, by the way, if an NBA team offered him the right money, the right job, the right opportunity, I think he'd consider the NBA as well. But I want to stick with Texas right now. I want to focus on Texas because what I would also say about the John Calipari situation at Texas, would John Calipari be interested in Texas? I think that's correct. The problem is I talked to, again, two people who know Calipari. I think a lot of people might be asking the wrong question. I don't think the question is, would John Calipari be interested in Texas? I think the bigger question is, would Texas actually be interested in John Calipari? And that one, I'm not totally sold on because here's the bottom line. Here's what you need to know about the University of Texas. Here's what you need to know about the beautiful city of Austin. And this is going to sound crazy. This is going to blow your mind, but it's the truth. They have cable television in Austin, and they have the internet in Austin. And they have watched Kentucky basketball over the last couple of years, certainly this year, and they certainly know what is being said about John Calipari right now. And so when you think about Texas and you think about all that they can offer a coach, and you think about some of the guys that could potentially be interested, the names that I just mentioned, Scott Drew, Brad Underwood, Nate Oates, Eric Musselman, other guys, Jerome Tang, Dennis Gates, I don't know who's on that list, But I bring it up because you mean to tell me right now that Coach Cal, with all due respect, I understand he's a Hall of Famer. I understand he's an all-time great. Is he a better candidate right now than Nate Oates? Is he a better candidate right now than Eric Musselman? Is he a better candidate right now than Scott Drew, who just won a national championship less than 2 years ago? I don't think so. And so, again, I think that's part of the intriguing part about this from the Calipari Texas perspective is I think Calipari would absolutely listen. I don't know that Texas is going to call him. And I had somebody bring up something interesting that I think is worth sharing. A lot of people want to compare this situation right now. Could Cal actually leave for Texas to what happened a few years ago in 2019 with UCLA? If you remember, UCLA fired Steve Alford in December, right around the new year, I believe. And they basically spent 3-4 months vetting candidates, and it became clear that John Calipari was their number one guy. I don't know the exact number, but I mean, they offered a lot of money for him to come be the face of that program. And I talked about it at the time. I think he did seriously maybe consider it a little bit, but that was when he decided to come back to Kentucky, and that was where he essentially signed what amounts to be the lifetime contract that you hear about every single time Kentucky loses. Why I bring it up, though, I had somebody bring this up. I thought it was interesting. They said everybody wants to compare this to Texas. You can't really compare UCLA to Texas for this reason. This ain't the same Kentucky program in 2023 that it was in 2019 when UCLA came hard after Calipari, which they did, which we know that they did. In 2019, when John Calipari officially turned down that job at UCLA, Kentucky was coming off a season in which they were a player or two away from making the Final Four in 2019. That was the year they lost to Auburn, Bruce Pearl, Elite Eight, in overtime. And I don't even remember a lot of that game, but they lost in overtime. They could have gone to the Final Four. The year before that, Sweet 16. The year before that, 2017, made an Elite Eight, lost basically at the buzzer to North Carolina. So when the UCLA job was open, we're talking about 3 years where Calipari was coming off back-to-back second weekends of the tournament. And really, 2017 and 2019, he was a play away from going to the Final Four, 2 plays away from going to the Final Four. Well, right now, today, this second, Kentucky might not even make the NCAA tournament this year. Now, to be clear, I think they're going to make it. They have a nice soft spot in their schedule coming up outside of a game at Tennessee this weekend. But really, they should go about 4-1 in their next 5 games. And I think they'll start to pick up some momentum as we hit the middle to the end of SEC play. I think they're making the NCAA tournament. I don't think it's a guarantee, though, that they're making the NCAA tournament. And so that, to me, is the problem with the Texas situation. A season where you might not even make the tournament, coming off a year where you lost to St. Peter's, coming off a year before that in 2020 when you missed the 2021 when you missed the NCAA tournament. Obviously, 2020 there was no NCAA tournament played, and so you talk about a coach that is a Hall of Famer, that is an all-time great, that could very well go into this offseason with 0 NCAA tournament wins in 4 calendar years. It is 2023 as I speak to you. The last time Kentucky won an NCAA tournament game was 2019, and I know a tournament was canceled between now and then. But think about all of the programs that have won tournament games since then. You don't need me to go through all of them. But, off the top of my head, Loyola Chicago made a Sweet 16. I don't know. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I can't think of anybody. But the point is, a lot of teams have made the tournament. A lot of teams have won games in the tournament. And so I'm just not sold that even though he's a big name, he is a candidate that Texas is going to crawl over glass to get. And so I'll put a bow on this. I'll end it. We'll wrap the show on that. I think as we kind of continue to watch this Texas situation, one, Calipari, even if you're a Kentucky fan that wants Calipari out, you got to start winning games. But 2, I think a lot of people might be asking the wrong question about this whole situation. To me, the question is not, does John Calipari want Texas? To me, the question is, would Texas actually want John Calipari?